Welcome, dear pre-beta users, to the first iAversal tutorial to get you up and running inside of Vertex as soon as possible. We will be looking at a few basic workflows so you can get an overview of the user interface and get to know Vertex, and then hopefully have a good time testing out this current version. So first things first, what are you seeing here? Here you see a sign saying Vertex trial version. What you are holding in your hands at the moment is the trial license of Vertex. This means that you have full functionality. You can save projects, you can import content, you can connect as many displays to your computer as you like, but you will only be able to work in the standalone mode. So you cannot connect Vertex to another system using a Vertex license over the network, and you will not be able to use a full screen or an internal output without the watermark. But with the watermark and in standalone mode, you can test the complete software and work your way through it to get to know the interface. So let's dive right in and start importing some content. For that, we go into the Project Explorer tab, go to Content, do a right click and click Import Content for the time being. I'm gonna select 2 or 3 files. There we go. Press Open. And as you can see now, the import process is starting and we get an orange progress bar. This progress bar symbolizes that a proxy file is being generated in the background, which is a low-res preview, which can be used inside of our preview render editor for previewing large contents or large complex systems. The software follows a few very basic principles. If we click on an object in our software, we will always get all the information and everything I can do with it inside of the inspector tab on this side. For example, if I click on this video file, I can find a file version, a duration. I can also jump into info, get some information on its color space, on its pixel size, or maybe into audio to find out if you have audio channels or not. So everything you click on in the software, all the controls and all the information that objects gives you are collected in this inspector tab on the right hand side. So let's dive right in and do some content compositing. First things first, this is what we call our render editor. This is where you composite all your content, but it is also where you manage all your system outputs. We'll look at that in a later tutorial. So for now, we will switch the view from all mode, which you can see all your outputs, to content mode, which actually only gives you a blank canvas space which you can composite your content. So we'll grab a first clip, drag and drop it straight into the renderer, and as you can see here, it's already been applied to our timeline. We can see an audio waveform, and if I press play, you will actually start to hear the audio as well. So here we go.
I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. Yeah, I like to.
Basically, every file that has embedded audio can be played back straight away inside of Vertex. As in some cases, that might be a bit of a pain. We've added a mute button down here on the right side. So as soon as you click this button, you will not hear the audio playing back anymore, which for the sake of the tutorial, we'll keep that way. So we've added this clip container, and now we want to start to do things with it. So for example, I can now jump into the inspector. I can grab this position control, move it. I can do some scaling. I could do the same thing inside of my render editor here with these on-screen controls, or I can even go into here, type in values, or even use mathematical functions. So for example, if my element is at 500, I can divide it by 2. So everything is pixel-based and mathematically usable. As you can see, the inspector is grouped into different categories. The main category is the controls you need most in everyday show situations. So for example, you have the opacity of a render object straight away available. You have position, scale, you have some basic color corrections which you might need, as well as levels and cropping. If you want to go into details, you can always switch into the relevant tabs, for example, the video tab or the audio tab, or in the all tab, which you can see everything, every single control an element has in our software. Now let's look a little bit closer at what has happened with the values we've adjusted. As you can see, I can move to any point in this container and all the values I've adjusted are available for all of the container. This is a user mode which we call the value mode, which some people may know for video editing, where any parameter change I do in the inspector is automatically applied for the whole container. If I want to animate a certain parameter, I can do a double click onto my container, have a drop-down menu of all the available keyframes, and for example, can do a right click, add a keyframe for my opacity, use my mouse wheel to zoom in or zoom out, and now I would have an opacity fade for this parameter. Next to the value mode, there's also a mode called the programmer mode, which works more like a light desk. We'll dive into that in a later tutorial. So to round things up, let's have a look at what the timeline can also do. For example, I can do a right click in here. I can add a cue, click on the cue and give it some information. For example, tell it to be a pause cue. So when I play back my timeline, it will stop when it hits the cue. That is a very, very basic overview of the Vertex user interface, and we will now dive in deeper into the different tabs in the next tutorials.